This episode is sponsored by HASA, the trusted choice for liquid chlorine. It's better because it offers the highest purity, works instantly, and contains no added CYA. By the bottom feeder, professional-grade battery-powered swimming pool vacuum system, it sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. And by Skimmer, trusted by over 30,000 pool service pros across North America. Skimmer's software helps you save time, grow revenue, and boost your 5-star reviews. Whether you're just starting out or expanding your team, Skimmer's easy-to-use tools and expert support have you covered. Upgrade your business in 2025 with Skimmer. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy today.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. It's been a while since I've done a podcast on this subject, and I think it's important to cover. And this may sound like something discouraging, but I think it's more factual, and this is something that you should take to heart. If you're considering getting into the pool service business, I'm going to give you some reasons why you may not want to get into the pool service industry or pool service business itself. If you're looking to expand your pool service or get support out in the field, or if you just want one-on-one coaching, join my coaching program with over 270 members and growing. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. And I'm going to reassure everyone who's in the industry and those who are really serious about considering jumping into the industry that this is a great industry to get into. There's a lot of potential and possibilities. There's a lot of profit to be made in this business. It's an industry that is often ignored and is something that a lot of people don't think about. It's very much like house cleaning. If you kind of add up how much a house cleaner makes, and I've done this because I've had several services when I have a vacancy, and I just kind of did the math on how much money they make every month, and some of them are making $18,000 to $20,000 a month doing house cleaning. So it's one of those kind of things where you don't think about the amount of money that's possible in an industry. By the way, I'm not particularly good at cleaning houses, and I probably wouldn't do it for a living, but if I made $20,000 a month, I may improve my house cleaning skills definitely at that point. But as far as the pool service industry, it's very scalable. You can bring an employee on, they can do some accounts for you, like 60 accounts or 40 accounts, and so you can make more money working the same amount of hours. And it's relatively an easy business to get into and learn. There's a lot of opportunities, at least in my area. You're handed service accounts. There's so many people that want pool service and very few vendors in my area. Other areas are more competitive, of course. And it's something that's relatively easy to navigate. It's not a very difficult industry to learn. And once you kind of learn the basics, I would say within 6 months to a year or a year and a half, you should be highly proficient in pool service and be able to tackle just about any kind of problem or any service account. So with that said, there's a lot of positives, but I also want to bring reality to you that you may not have the personality or be that person that's going to be successful. I know many pool service companies and many pool service professionals that I know that did this for a spell, didn't like it, and got out of it. So you don't make that mistake and don't get started in something and kind of waste your time and waste everyone else's time. And in some ways give the industry a black eye, because there are so many accounts that I've taken over where the customer is like, yeah, the pool guy was here. He was great for like 3 months and he just disappeared on me. Those are not good things for the industry, and it does hurt everyone. So here are some things to think about and seriously consider when you're wanting to make the jump into the pool service industry. Number one, it's a self-motivating business. What I mean is that there's no one behind you telling you to do things. If you remember those days when you were growing up and you were in school, your parents would be like, hey, when are you going to do your homework? Or when are you going to turn that assignment in? Are we going to do this? It's not like that. And so if you're not self-motivated, if you can't do something without having someone to tell you to do something, then this business is probably not for you, because there's a lot of situations you're going to run into where you don't want to go out there and do that, or you may not like a certain account. And it's not one of those things where you have to have a motivation beyond somebody telling you what to do. I mean, some motivation, of course, is getting paid for that service account and making money. That in itself is motivation. But I think there's something beyond that. in a lot of cases. And reasons why some people don't stick to the business is because they just don't have what it takes to get out of bed every day, plan their route, show up and do the pools they're supposed to do, troubleshoot the problems, communicate with the customers. I can't tell you how many customers have told me that the previous pool service company never told me this or never communicated with me because they just didn't have that motivation to actually run their business and be active in their business. So there is something intangible, and some people are just wired to be kind of more self-motivated. When I was growing up, I was working when I was 15 and a half, and I was driving. The day that I was able to get my license, I went to the DMV like a week after and got my driver's license. I bought my first car. I wanted a car, so I saved up for it. It was $1,800. It was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, and the roof was peeling off. It was really a pretty nice car. It had power brakes. I don't know if anyone has driven a car with power brakes. It's so weird. I don't think they make those anymore. It was like a little tiny point in the market where they had cars with power brakes. And so that was I was really, really self-motivated even at 16 years old to do a lot of things. So that's something that's kind of innate and wired into you. And you kind of have to have that personality to be successful in this business, or just about any business is self-motivating in a way. Another factor that we don't talk about too much, because I guess, we do talk about it sometimes when it's really extreme out there, but we don't really talk about it too much because it's just kind of part of the business. You're working outdoors and you have to deal with the elements. Now, if you've been working in an office job and you really don't like going out there cutting the grass, or don't like going outside, or just don't like the sun too much, this job is not for you, because you're going to be in the sun quite a bit. You'll be outside, you have to deal with the elements, and it's something that is an unpleasant part of the business. I mean, I wish I could do all the pools indoors, which is funny is because a lot of the manufacturers and overseas, when they talk about their products and they send me emails about testing their products, they're always thinking that here in America, our pools are indoor. I guess in Europe, a lot of pools are indoors and other parts of the world. But here in America, there's very few indoor pools. In fact, I've really actually never serviced an indoor pool before. I think I did a bid on one before, and I didn't really like the smell of being in there, and it just was kind of weird doing an indoor pool. But we rarely have indoor pools. They're all outside, unfortunately. In Florida, you have a slight advantage because a lot of your pools are screened in, which is nice. We can't do that here in California. I'm not sure why it hasn't caught on. I think a lot of it has to do with the wind events we get here. And of course, Florida has hurricanes, so those screened-in pools are pretty much gone at that point. But here we have a lot of heavy wind events, and so maybe they just don't think they're going to hold up, or they never caught on here on the West Coast for whatever reason. So there's a slight advantage there. But in most cases, there's no shade provided in a lot of these summer days, and it gets pretty cold in the winter, and then you have the rain, you have the wind. So the elements are something that you should be aware of. I know a lot of pool service companies don't like hiring new pros like in May or June, because then they're like doing the worst of it right away, and they're usually going to quit. You probably want to hire people, in January or February when things are mild and not too bad. At least in California, it's fairly mild. And it's one of those things where it's just part of the job. So if you can't deal with the elements, this job is not for you, definitely. Another thing that you may want to consider is that there's not much of a safety net when you have your own business. So there's no kind of way to bail yourself out. If you're working a corporate job, you can go to another corporation. If you're a manager at In-N-Out Burger, or you're a manager at McDonald's, you can go to another fast food restaurant. It's one of those things where it's not like you have some way to get more income if something fails, if you're not producing enough money. There was one group member, I remember them vividly, husband and wife, they bought a pool route. The owner was an old guy, and he would do weird things like go to the pool again the same week for no reason. So a lot of them had like twice a week service at the rate of the monthly service, once a week service. And it was one of those things where they took over. Customers expected them to come twice a week, which is weird to begin with on a regular pool that's not gigantic or has problems or is being an Airbnb type pool. And so they had a lot of problems getting their money. Also, they had a lot of late payments because the owner just didn't keep up on the customers. And so a lot of them were late, partial payments. And they bought this route, and they did it for like a year and a half. And they realized that with the late payments, with the customers always on them, and the way the person had it set up, it was just not going to function properly. And I believe they resold it or they got out of the business somehow. And the reason they were pushed out was because they couldn't balance their income and they were paying their bills late, their personal bills late, because customers were paying them late and the previous owner was never on the customers to pay on time. And there's no safety net. In other words, they didn't have any savings. They didn't have any way of kind of making that gap. So of course you can have an emergency fund that will fix anything. If you get late payments or if someone doesn't pay you for an acid wash or something like that, you should have about 6 months of reserves. So 6 months of reserves is basically you can pay everything for 6 months if you don't get paid. And that's kind of your safety net. But beyond that, you really can't, do much beyond this if you're not making a profit and you're not paying your bills. So that's one drawback of being self-employed. I think there's some statistics that 7 out of 10 businesses fail within 5 years. I think a lot of that has to do with people not being prepared and not having the resources to weather those storms. So again, you can build your own safety net by having an emergency fund, but just note that once you get into the industry and you're building up your route and you're really committed, the only outs are maybe selling your route, which takes time, maybe getting some more accounts or doing some kind of creative advertising. But there is something to be said with, the safety of working a job that's 9 to 5, a W-2 job versus being self-employed. And if you don't have the tolerance for that and you can't really do that, then I would say being self-employed, doing pool service or any other business would not be the right business for you. Another one that's really interesting that I find that a lot of industries can't cross over into, coming from a different industry, the best people in the industry that are successful come from either sales or hospitality. And I think these are the personality types that do really well with dealing with customers and customer problems. If you're working maybe at Walmart stocking shelves, or if your job is something that, let's say you're working for a mechanic and you're just behind the scenes all the time, never deal with the customer, you may have trouble going from doing this to dealing with customers face-to-face, text messages, emails. If you have no customer relation skills, it's a problem because this is pool and then the next word is service. And so you're providing a service to people. I always say that pool service is more of a hospitality category because maintaining and cleaning a pool is really easy. I mentioned the scalability. You can send an employee out there to do that work, and it's relatively easy to train someone to do the pool service. What's not easy is the hospitality aspect of it. And I think I'll go back to the house cleaner analogy here, or comparison with pool service, is that when I was calling around to get a house cleaner in an area, the personality and the responsiveness and how they kind of did their business, how they communicated, updates, what they're doing, photos, all of these were kind of like a hospitality type customer service thing because they're actually cleaning your house, yes, but they're dealing with you as a customer. And I've heard from other house cleaners in the business that customers are sometimes really tough, like, why are you only spending 40 minutes here? The last house cleaner spent an hour and a half. You get the same kind of things that we get in our industry, like, why are you only spending 15 minutes at the pool? The last pool guy was here for half an hour. So there's a lot of crossover in the business because it is a service-oriented hospitality type business. Same thing with landscapers or gardeners. To some extent, you're providing a service and the customer has a say in how their yard looks. And so the aspect of pool service that a lot of people forget is that it is a service and it is very customer-oriented and customer-driven. And if you don't have the personality to deal with people, deal with problems, deal with emails, deal with text messages, if you don't have the ability to do any of that, if you're just kind of not a people person, you're more introverted, you're not going to succeed in this business. There was a member of my group that came from the jewelry industry. He was basically in the back room making jewelry. He decided to do pool service and realized that he just didn't have the personality to deal with the customers directly. It didn't last more than a year after he bought his route because of the fact that he was very introverted and not a people person. And I'm not saying you can't succeed with a more introverted personality, but it's harder because the salesperson, hospitality personality is going to go back there and bid the job better and be more successful landing the jobs. One particular example is a very successful pool company here in Riverside, California, and he's also in Las Vegas. And he has a personality. He's a very young person. He has a personality that when he walks back there, people already know that he's serious, that he knows what he's doing, and he's no nonsense. And basically tells the customer, if you hire me, pay my rate, I know it's higher than most people, you'll never have a problem. And they believe him because that's the kind of salesperson personality that he projects. And I think that goes a long way in making your business grow and really helps a lot to have the right personality. And the last one I'll touch on, which is really not something that's in this realm of the ones I mentioned before, but it is something to consider, and that is your insurance benefits. Now, this may sound weird, and it may be like, well, why would that stop anyone from jumping industries? It has stopped a lot of people that have contacted me from jumping from their corporate job into a business or self-employment. And one of them, I'll give you an example. He has a family of 4, and his company pays for his health insurance, which is like $1,100 a month. And he was trying to calculate, if I get into the pool industry and I have to get my own insurance, it's going to be a lot more because, I can't bargain and get the rate that my work's getting. And by the way, they were paying the full $1,100 for him. He wasn't paying a penny for his health insurance, which is, what is that, $12,000 a year or more than that. So that's also a factor, is that there are some expenses that you have to incur yourself now. That's one of them. And you may have higher vehicle insurance if you need to get commercial insurance in your area for your service vehicle. You're going to be driving a lot more, putting more wear and tear on your vehicle. So if you work 5 minutes from home and you drive there back and forth, or 10 minutes, or you don't even drive, you take the mass transit, you're going to have to pay for fuel and all the other costs associated with that. And it's something to also consider if you're going to do the math. If you have 70 pools eventually versus what you're getting paid now, how much more are you going to need to cover those other costs or these other benefits you're receiving from a regular employment job? Now, don't get me wrong, that wouldn't stop a lot of people, but it has stopped some people. And the pool business, again, is scalable. So there's ways of scaling it and building into the pool service rate to cover those expenses. But a lot of times you can't see that right away when you're getting into it. You have to really crunch the numbers and make sure you can make a profit. So those are factors that I think you should consider. I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker for a lot of people, but for some people it is. Giving up those benefits is a big jump. And a lot of people don't want to give up those benefits, which are really good. And they have 401ks sometimes, retirement plans built into the company. And I can see the benefit of having a W-2 job over doing pool service in some respect. If you're making good money and getting those benefits, you may not want to jump into a self-employed industry. But if you see the scalability of it as a way of increasing the amount of money you're making currently, then you can jump into the business and do that. And I'm just trying to be realistic here, not discouraging anyone, but I think this is the reality of it. And if you talk to anyone in the industry, they'll probably pretty much tell you the same thing. Even if they enjoy being in the industry, they'll tell you some of the things that were discouraging for them and some things that they were hesitant about. If they're being honest, there's a lot of things. And of course, there's a lot. If you write down pros and cons on a piece of paper, I believe the pros are going to come out a lot more than the cons of going into the pool service industry. But that's a personal decision, and I'll leave that up to anyone listening who's thinking about making the jump into the pool service industry. If you're looking for other podcasts I've recorded, you can find those at my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the podcast icon on the banner, click on that, and there'll be a drop-down menu of over 1,500 podcasts for you there. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.